Shalom, Kalalalim Laihau Bashem Yahushai, Bashem Rakah HaKodash, double honors to the apostles of GMS that rule well and that teach well, who I learned this truth from, and salutations and blessings to you hopeful elect. All right, you brothers and you few sisters that take heed. Okay, so this is an article from Forbes, and it says how lead caused America's violent crime epidemic, and lead meaning the heavy metal, the toxic heavy metal, right? This is from January 3rd, 2013, man. And this just goes into the sorcery of this man, how high level, right? The Most High blessed him on the left-hand side to deal with the spirits and to know, certain knowledge, right? The scriptures do call them the elite of Esau, wiser than Daniel, right? But as you see here is a diagram illustration of the gas lead you had back in the day, right? I believe all the way from the 40s up until I think it was the 80s or maybe the 70s that they removed leaded gas, right? Because the gas that was supplied was leaded, right? It was full of lead. And this was observed, right? So it says starting in the 1960s, America saw a huge increase in levels of violent crime that peaked in the early 1990s, then steadily declined, and continues to decline today. All kinds of theories have been promulgated to explain this peak and decline in crime, and plenty of politicians in the 1990s took credit for it. But in what I personally consider to be a tour de force of journalism, Kevin Drum of Mother Jones has summarized all of the available research. All of it point to one simple idea: violent crime rose as a result of lead poisoning because of leaded gasoline. It declined because of lead abatement policies, right? Meaning they removed the lead from the gas. There are three basic reasons why this theory should be believed. First, as Drum points out, the numbers correlate almost perfectly. If you add a lag time of 23 days, he writes, quote, lead emissions from automobiles explain 90% of the variation in violent crime in America. Toddlers who ingested high levels of lead in the 40s and 50s really were more likely to become violent criminals in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, right? And then when you throw other things like obviously the media, though it was limited during the 70s and 80s, you still had it. You still had movies, you still had TV shows, talk shows, people watch TV. When you throw in other things like different chemicals in the food, so it's a toxic overload. Some people can handle it more. A lot of people can handle less. A lot of people are born weak, right, through misnutrition or just from poisoning. Malnutrition as they call it, right? You're not getting certain minerals in your body that it requires. And today you see the deal today, man. People are eating empty calories. Their colons are backed up. They got 20, 30 pounds of feces in their intestines. They got parasites and worms. They're not getting any of the food. That's why they eat. They get hungry because the parasites and the worms, they get the food first. They're eating the food first, man. They're getting all those nutrients, and then whatever the scraps is left for you, from that malnourished food in itself. You're lucky to get any kind of minerals from those foods, But anyway, this is just another point. And then I lost my train of thought about what I was gonna say, because I mentioned the TV and the media, the drugs and the food. Lord's will, it'll come back to me. But this just goes into that sorcery, man. His pharmaceuticals is another thing, that causes people to bug out, man, to go crazy. But this man, just from this lead, and it took him decades to take it out, right? let's see down here. It says, second, this correlation holds true with no exceptions. Every country studied has shown the same strong correlation. And this is from Forbes, man. All right, this is from Forbes. This is not from, I'm not even going to say it, but anyway, every country studied has shown the same strong correlation between leaded gasoline and violent crime rates, right? Oh, and that's what I was going to say. The drugs, man. The drugs, right? You had the heroin epidemic, then you had the crack epidemic, and in between you had the coke, right? But when that crack hit, and then aside from those other ones, like acid, ecstasy, and all that shit, you had PCP, you have fentanyl now. You have a new one called tranquilizer, right? So all these different things, man, these are all sorceries that this man uses. It's gonna become when you watch Batman, the first one, Batman Begins, not the old one from 2000. What is that, 6 or 5? That came out, Batman Begins, with this guy Christian Bale. When you watch that movie, what happens to the city? They poison the water, right? They're actually pumping the water, right, for a long time, and then there's a certain gas they release. I believe it was a gas. I forget how it went, but they released the gas, right? Because what they put in the chemicals, or in the water was like a gas or a chemical. When you light it up, basically, when it's ready, it sprays out into the air. Because the water is from everywhere. The water from the pipes, the water from your toilet, from the plumbing. Right, it sprays up, and then you inhale that, and then you go crazy, right? That's what happened in that movie. So this is not so far-fetched that this man uses these things to make you go crazy, man, right? Within the United States, you can see the data at the state level where lead concentrations declined quickly, crime declined quickly. Where it declined slowly, crime declined slowly. The data even holds true at the neighborhood level. High lead concentrations correlate so well that you can overlay maps of crime rates over maps of lead concentrations and get an almost perfect fit. Third, and probably most important, the data goes beyond just these models. As Drum himself points out, quote, if econometric studies were all there were to the story of lead, you'd be justified in remaining skeptical no matter how good the statistics look. But the chemistry and neuroscience of lead gives us good reason to believe the connection, and here we go. Here's the evidence of what happens. Right? People ask, "Oh, what's lead? What does that do? What happens?" "Oh, I'm just gonna drink my tap water, which has lead and mercury, and fluoride and all kinds of shit." Right? It says decades of research has shown that lead poisoning causes significant and probably irreversible damage to the brain. Not only does lead degrade cognitive abilities and lower intelligence, it also degrades a person's ability to make decisions by damaging areas of the brain responsible for emotional regulation, impulse control. That's why these young kids, man, they're completely bugged out. They're completely impulsive. They make completely irrational decisions. You had this kid, I think 2-3 months ago here in Toronto. He did a TikTok where he tried to jump on a train and he died, man. These kids are just bugging out, man. And I know that's for fame and as well that hype, that drug. Your 15 minutes on social media, but even just the way they talk, they can't have a full conversation, man. Right? They're looking everywhere. They're checking their phone. They're tweaking, man. Right? Like tweakers, basically. Right? They're impulsive. So that shows you have heavy metal damage. A lot of people have more heavy metal damage than they think. They have mercury in their system. They have lead in their system. Cadmium is another one. Fluoride. Right? So it says, not only does lead degrade cognitive abilities and lower intelligence, man. Jeez. It says it also degrades a person's ability to make decisions by damaging areas of the brain responsible for emotional regulation, impulse control, attention, verbal reasoning, and mental flexibility. The bottom line, as Drum points points out is that even moderately high levels of lead exposure are associated with aggressivity, impulsivity, ADHD, and lower IQ. And right there, you've practically defined the profile of a violent youth offender, right? And if you grew and you've been around Jake and you grew up around Jake, or you just been been around Jake, you know, when they're young, man, they're like that because their diet's all messed up. You know, if you came up on a good diet, count yourself blessed, man. You know, that's a good thing, right? But a lot of us, we came up on garbage, man, right? And brothers still eat garbage, but you should eat good. What the hell, brothers need to eat good. You need to invest in your time to understand basic nutrition, which is not hard. Go on YouTube, go on Google, knowledge shall be increased, man. Everything's out here, right? Daniel 12, knowledge shall be increased, right? Use the unicorn horn, use the unicorn horn, man. In the book of Job, it says, I've barely scratched the surface of Drum's excellent article, and I'd seriously encourage you to hop over to, well, he talks about that. But that was a good article, man. I'm going to get the scripture. This is Psalms 36 and 1. This is to the chief musician, a psalm of David, the servant of the Lord Yahweh. The transgression of the wicked saith within my heart that there is no fear of the Most High before his eyes. For he flattereth himself in his own eyes, until his iniquity be found to be hateful. Right? Let me see. Verse 3, the words of his mouth are iniquity and deceit. So everything this comes out of this man's mouth is what? It's sin and it's lies. Right? Unless the Most High puts a spirit on him, right? Brothers ask, but how come certain whistleblowers in this, unless the Most High puts the spirit on him, as it says in the book of Job about their tongue shall fall upon themselves, right? He hath left off to be wise and to do good. He deviseth mischief upon his bed. He setteth himself in a way that is not good. He abhorreth not evil. And I'm going to read this in the NLT. Right? Let me get from verse 3. Everything they say is crooked and deceitful. They refuse to act wisely or do good. They lie awake at night. What are they doing at night? What do they call it? The witch's hour, from 12 to 3 or 3 o'clock. Nothing good happens. Well, they're doing ceremonies and rites and rituals. They have certain dates, right? They have certain, just like us brothers, we get together. We have high holy days. Right? They have holy days as well. They have high holy days as well. And on the left hand side, it's a mirror. Okay? It's a balance. They have their own things, right? They lie awake at night, hatching sinful plots. Their actions are never good. They make no attempt to turn from evil. When this man Aleister Crowley, when you go into his writings, this man would tell you, hey, the highest level of satanic ritual, right, is to get a pure child, a male child, pure male child, right? The purer the better, the higher the magic, right? So you gotta take him out, so that's how they get down, man. And when you really go down that rabbit hole, some brothers, you don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but people know what's there, right? People know, even with this movie Sounds of Freedom, which that's a left-hand plot anyway. Those guys, those guys are Jesuits, man. Those guys are they're in an order. Even that guy Tim Ballard, all those guys are all set up. Jim Caviezel, in that movie they're just going into Jake and they're not even at the tip of the iceberg. They're just going into what people know. Pretty much. It goes deeper, right? Anyway, I hope you're ratified with that. I wanted to bring that scripture out because, look, is that not a sinful plot? And there's more. There's a lot of things. Alright, but anyway, Kal Halalim Lai How Bashim Yaushai Bashim Rakha HaKodash. Double honors to the apostles of GMS that rule well, who I learned the truth from, and salutations, blessings to you elect out there. Shalom.